Amid a raging blizzard, an elderly black couple, living alone in their freezing, run-down cottage and struggling with a failing fireplace, suddenly heard an engine roar and then die outside their porch. Limping to the door, the old man found a young man injured, his face pale from the cold, trembling as he begged for a little hot water. Without hesitation, they brought him inside, wrapped him in blankets, cleaned his wound, and warmed him with soup. The old man even braved the icy wind to fix the stalled motorcycle. They thought they were simply helping a stranger, unaware that this kindness would become the reason he saved their lives 3 days later. Before we go back, let us know where you're watching from, and subscribe, because tomorrow I've got something extra special for you. The blizzard hit harder than the forecast predicted. Arthur Carter, a 75-year-old black man with graying curls, stood at his living room window watching the snow pile up against the fence. His knees ached, they always did when a storm was coming. 75 years of life had taught him to read the weather better than any meteorologist. Arthur, come away from that cold glass. Evelyn, a petite black woman with warm brown skin and gentle eyes, called from her armchair, her hands trembling slightly as she folded napkins. The Parkinsons made even simple tasks take twice as long, but she never complained. "You'll catch your death. Just checking the roads, dear." Arthur turned back, his limp more pronounced in the cold. An old injury from his days at the auto shop, a hydraulic lift that gave out back in '89. Nobody should be out in this mess. That's when he heard it, the distinctive rumble of a motorcycle engine sputtering and dying. Then silence. Arthur frowned. He knew that sound, a Harley-Davidson with carburetor trouble. The engine tried to turn over once, twice, then nothing. "Someone's outside," he muttered. A minute later, heavy boots crunched through the snow on their porch. The knock was hesitant, almost apologetic. Arthur opened the door to find a young man standing there, maybe 25, covered in snow. Tattoos crawled up his neck despite the freezing temperature. His leather jacket was soaked through, and his right hand was wrapped in a dirty bandage, blood seeping through. "I'm sorry to bother you, sir." The young man's teeth chattered. "My bike died about 50 feet down. Do you have any hot water? My hands I can't feel them anymore." Arthur stepped back without hesitation. "Get in here before you freeze solid." The young man stumbled inside, and Evelyn was already on her feet, slower than she used to be, but moving with purpose. "Oh, my lord, look at you." She guided him to the couch near the fireplace. "Arthur, get towels, and that soup from lunch heated up." "I don't want to be trouble, ma'am. Just some water to warm my hands, and You'll sit right there and do as you're told." Evelyn's voice was firm but kind. She was already examining his injured hand, carefully unwrapping the bloody cloth. "How did this happen?" "Caught it on a sharp edge changing my oil yesterday." The young man, Jax, he'd said his name was Jax, winced as she cleaned the wound. "Probably should have gotten stitches, but you didn't have the money for a hospital." Evelyn finished, her voice understanding. She'd seen plenty of young people struggling, working themselves raw just to get by. "This needs proper bandaging. Arthur, bring my first aid kit." Arthur moved to the bathroom, his limp slowing him down but not stopping him. He could hear Evelyn talking softly to the boy, that gentle voice she used to use on their own kids back when they still came around. When he returned with the kit, Jax was looking around the room with something like longing in his eyes. "You've got a beautiful home," Jax said quietly. Evelyn smiled as she opened the first aid kit. "We've been here 43 years, raised 2 boys in this house." "They nearby." The silence that followed was heavy. Arthur busied himself with the soup, pretending not to notice the way Evelyn's smile tightened. "They're busy with their own lives," she said finally, her shaking hands carefully cleaning Jax's wound with antiseptic. "You know how it is." Jax didn't push, he just nodded. While Evelyn tended to Jax's hand, Arthur bundled up and headed outside. The cold bit through his thin jacket immediately, but he barely noticed. His mind was already working through the problem. The Harley sat dark and silent in the snow ice already forming on the chrome. Arthur ran his hand along the engine, still warm. He popped open the side panel and bent down his bad knee, screaming in protest. Carburetor just like he thought. Flooded and frozen. No replacement parts out here. And even if there were, he doubted the kid could afford them. But Arthur Carter hadn't spent 50 years as a mechanic without learning a few tricks. He went to his shed, snow whipping around him, and dug through his collection of salvaged parts. A piece of wire here, an old gasket there. Most people would have thrown this stuff away years ago, but Arthur never threw anything away. You never knew when something might save the day. Back at the bike, he worked with numb fingers, his breath coming out in white clouds. The wind howled, but Arthur was focused. This was what he knew. This was what he was good at. Inside, Jax watched Evelyn's shaking hands carefully wrap his wound with fresh gauze. "You've got Parkinson's," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. 10 years now. Evelyn smiled, taping the bandage secure. "Some days are better than others. Today's actually not too bad. My grandmother had it." Jax's voice went soft. "She passed last year." "I'm sorry, sweetheart." Evelyn patted his shoulder, her touch warm despite the tremor. "She raised you?" "Yeah. My mom took off when I was 3. Dad was never in the picture. Graham did her best." He looked around the small, warm house. Pictures everywhere, wedding photos, old Polaroids, a lifetime of memories on every wall. "This place reminds me of hers. Same feeling, you know. Like love lives in the walls." Evelyn's eyes misted over. "That's a beautiful way to put it." "She used to say that." Jax's smile was sad. "Said you could always tell a home where people loved each other. Something about the way the light hit the rooms, the way the air felt. Your grandmother was a wise woman." "She was." Jax looked down at his freshly bandaged hand. "I miss her every day, especially around the holidays." Evelyn squeezed his shoulder, understanding in her touch. "What's your name, son?" "Jax. Jax Morrison." "Well, Jax Morrison, you drink this soup and you warm yourself up. Arthur won't be happy if I let you leave here still frozen." She poured the soup into a bowl, her hands shaking, but managing not to spill a drop. Years of practice learning to work with the tremors instead of against them. Jax took the bowl gratefully. The soup was homemade chicken and vegetables, rich and hot, the kind of food that tasted like someone cared. "This is incredible, ma'am." "Evelyn, call me Evelyn, and it's just soup, nothing fancy. My Graham used to make soup like this." Jax's voice was thick with memory. Sunday afternoons, the whole house would smell like it. They sat in comfortable silence while Jax ate. Outside, they could hear Arthur working the occasional clang of metal on metal, carrying through the storm. "Hey, he shouldn't be out there in this weather," Jax said, guilt creeping into his voice. "His knee, I saw him limping." "You try stopping Arthur Carter when someone needs help." Evelyn's smile was fond. "Been trying for 52 years. Hasn't worked yet." "How long have you been married?" 52 years this past October." Evelyn settled back in her chair, her eyes distant with memory. "Met him at a church social. He fixed my car in the parking lot. Battery was dead. I told him I'd buy him dinner as a thank you. He said he'd only accept if I'd let him take me to a movie instead." "Smooth." Jax grinned. "He thought he was." Evelyn laughed softly. "Took him to see some Western. I fell asleep 20 minutes in. When I woke up, he'd covered me with his jacket and was just sitting there watching me instead of the movie." "That's when you knew." "That's when I knew." Outside, Arthur worked in the driving snow. His fingers were numb, but he'd fashioned a makeshift fix using wire and an old trick he'd learned back in '72 from a mechanic in Detroit. It wasn't pretty, but it would get the kid where he needed to go. The wind cut through his thin jacket, but Arthur didn't stop. This boy needed help, and Arthur Carter had never turned away from someone who needed help. Not in 75 years, and he wasn't about to start now. 20 minutes later, Arthur limped back inside, snow caked in his gray hair, his lips tinged blue from the cold. "Arthur Carter, you're going to give me a heart attack." Evelyn rushed over with a towel as quickly as her condition allowed. "Look at you, frozen solid." "I'm fine, woman." But Arthur's voice was hoarse from the cold. "Try it now," he told Jax. They all went to the door. Jax hit the ignition and the Harley roared to life, strong and steady. "No way." Jax stared at the bike, then at Arthur. "How did you? I thought it was done for." "The carburetor was completely—" "Nothing's ever really done for if you know how to listen to it." Arthur's smile was modest, but there was pride in his eyes. The pride of a craftsman who still had it. "She'll get you home, but get that carburetor replaced soon as you can. This is just a Band-Aid." Jax reached for his wallet, pulling out what looked like his last $60. "Please let me pay you. You spent half an hour in a blizzard for a complete stranger." Arthur waved him off his expression, brooking no argument. "Keep it. Buy gas. Buy yourself a decent meal." "Sir, I can't just—" "Yes, you can." Evelyn pressed a thermos into Jax's good hand. "Soup for the road. And son, please be careful out there. I'm sure your mother's worried sick." Something flickered across Jax's face. Pain loss, something deep that he quickly buried. "Yes, ma'am. She would have been." He looked at both of them, these two strangers who'd shown him more kindness in 30 minutes than he'd seen in months. Arthur standing there in wet clothes, knee clearly killing him, but not saying a word. Evelyn hands trembling, but steady enough when someone needed help. These people barely had anything. Their house was small, their furniture old, their clothes worn, but they'd given without hesitation, without expecting anything in return. "When you get a chance," Arthur said, walking Jax to his bike, each step careful on the icy ground. "You help someone else. That's all the payment I need." Jax swung his leg over the Harley, the engine purring now like it was brand new. He looked back at the small wooden house, warm light glowing from the windows, smoke curling from the chimney into the dark sky. "I won't forget this," he said, his voice thick with emotion he didn't try to hide. "I swear to God I won't forget." Arthur just nodded, raising one hand in farewell. "Safe travels, son." Jax rode off into the storm, the taillights disappearing into the white. He didn't see Arthur wince as he climbed the porch steps or Evelyn waiting at the door with dry clothes and concern in her eyes. He didn't know that in 3 days, Arthur and Evelyn Carter would need help more desperately than he'd needed it tonight. But he would remember. God help him, he would remember. Christmas Eve of afternoon arrived with deceptive calm. The storm had passed, leaving everything buried under 2 feet of fresh snow. Arthur stood in the kitchen, his hands dusted with flour as he rolled out pie dough. The radio played Christmas carols softly in the background. "Is that apple or cherry?" Evelyn asked from the dining table where she was carefully folding cloth napkins despite her shaking hands. "Both." Arthur smiled. "Marcus always loved your apple pie, and cherry was always my favorite." "You made 2 pies." Evelyn's laugh was warm. "Arthur, he's one person. He's our son coming home for Christmas." Arthur's voice carried a hope he'd been holding on to for months. "First time in 3 years, Ev. I want everything to be perfect." Evelyn's smile faltered just slightly. "I know, sweetheart. I wish he'd visit more often. Not just when." "Don't." Arthur set down the rolling pin, walked over, and kissed the top of her head. "He's coming. That's what matters. Our boy's coming home." The house gleamed from days of preparation. Arthur had vacuumed every corner despite his bad knee. Evelyn had washed all the good linens, her trembling hands working slowly but steadily. They'd even put up a small Christmas tree. Nothing fancy, just a tabletop version with lights and a few ornaments from when the boys were small. The turkey was in the oven. The good china was out. Everything was ready. At 4 o'clock, they heard the car pull up. "He's here." Evelyn stood quickly smoothing her dress. "Arthur, he's here." Arthur wiped his hands on his apron, his heart pounding with anticipation. 3 years, 3 long years since he'd seen Marcus in person. Phone calls had been sparse, always rushed. But now, finally, his son was home. He opened the door with a smile that died on his lips. Marcus stepped out of a black Mercedes, not alone. 2 other people emerged, a woman in an expensive suit carrying a briefcase, and a man in a long coat who looked like he'd never smiled in his life. "Marcus." Arthur's voice was uncertain. "Son." Marcus walked up the path, his shoes crunching on the snow. He was 43 now, dressed in a tailored suit that probably cost more than Arthur's monthly pension. His hair was slicked back, his face unreadable. Behind designer sunglasses he didn't remove despite the gray sky. "Dad." Marcus didn't hug him, didn't even reach for a handshake. "This is Janet Moss, a real estate broker, and Richard Klein, my attorney." The words hit Arthur like a physical blow. "Real estate broker, son, what's—" "Can we come inside? It's cold out here." Arthur stepped back, confusion clouding his face. Evelyn appeared behind him, her smile bright and hopeful. "Marcus, oh, sweetheart, you look so—" She moved forward for a hug. Marcus sidestepped her smoothly. "Hi, Mom. We need to talk." The 4 of them sat in the living room. The turkey timer went off in the kitchen, but nobody moved. Arthur's pies sat cooling on the counter, the smell of cinnamon and apples filling the house with a warmth that felt increasingly hollow. "I don't understand," Arthur said slowly. "Marcus, what's this about?" Marcus pulled out a folder from his briefcase. "Dad, do you remember signing some papers for me about 6 months ago? I said they were insurance documents." Arthur's brow furrowed. "The ones you mailed, you said it was health insurance, that you were putting me and your mother on a better plan." "They weren't insurance papers, Dad." Marcus slid a document across the coffee table. "They were transfer of ownership papers for this house. The room went silent except for the ticking of the old grandfather clock. "What?" Evelyn's voice was barely a whisper. "The house is legally mine now." Marcus's tone was businesslike, detached. "You signed it over to me. It's all legal. Richard verified everything." Arthur's hands shook as he picked up the papers. The words blurred together. His own signature stared back at him right there at the bottom. How could he have been so stupid? His eyesight wasn't what it used to be, and he'd trusted his own son. "Marcus, there must be some mistake." "There's no mistake, Mr. Carter." The attorney spoke for the first time, his voice cold and precise. "The transfer is legal and binding. Your son is the rightful owner of this property." "But why?" Evelyn's voice cracked. "Marcus, this is our home. We've lived here for 43 years. We raised you here." "Mom, please don't make this harder than it needs to be." Marcus wouldn't meet her eyes. "The market value of this property has gone up significantly. This land alone is worth $400,000. I have a buyer ready to close immediately." "A buyer?" Arthur felt like the floor was dropping out from under him. "You're selling our house." "It's my house, Dad. Legally." Marcus gestured to the real estate broker. "Janet has already drawn up the sale agreement. The new owners want to tear down the existing structure and build something modern. They're paying cash, closing tomorrow." "Tomorrow?" Evelyn grabbed Arthur's arm, her whole body shaking now, and it wasn't just the Parkinsons. "Marcus, it's Christmas Eve. You can't be serious." "I'm very serious, Mom. And there's more." Marcus pulled out another document. "I've arranged for both of you to move into Meadowbrook Senior Living. It's a very nice facility, full-care medical staff on site. It'll be better for you, safer." "We don't want to go to a home." Arthur's voice rose, anger finally breaking through the shock. "This is our home, Marcus. How could you do this? How could I?" For the first time, emotion flickered across Marcus's face, defensiveness, maybe guilt. "You two are old. Mom can barely hold a coffee cup without spilling it. Dad, you can barely walk. What happens when one of you falls? When there's an emergency? You're isolated out here. We have neighbors. We have friends. You have nothing." Marcus's voice hardened. "You're living on a pittance of a pension in a house that's falling apart. I'm doing you a favor. Meadowbrook will take care of you." "We don't need taking care of." Arthur stood, his legs shaking. "We need our home. Our memories are here, our whole lives." "Your lives," Marcus laughed, the sound bitter. "Dad, you spent 50 years breaking your back in a garage for people who paid you nothing. Mom cleaned houses until her hands wouldn't stop shaking. You gave everything to me and James, and what do you have to show for it? This rundown house and a couple $100 in the bank?" "We have each other," Evelyn whispered. "We have our dignity." "Dignity doesn't pay medical bills, Mom." Marcus stood as well. "I'm not arguing about this. The papers are signed. The sale is happening. The transport van from Meadowbrook will be here at 6 to take you to the facility." Arthur looked at his son, this stranger in an expensive suit. "When did you become this person?" Something flickered in Marcus's eyes, but it was gone instantly. "I became someone who understands how the world works. The new owners need possession tonight. They have contractors coming first thing tomorrow to start demolition." "Tonight?" Evelyn's voice broke completely. "Marcus, please. Please at least let us stay through Christmas. The deal closes at midnight. You need to be out." Marcus moved toward the door, the broker and attorney following. "Pack what you need. Personal items only. The furniture stays. It's considered part of the property value." Arthur grabbed his son's arm. "Marcus, son, please, don't do this." Marcus looked at his father's hand, weathered, scarred from decades of honest work, and pulled away. "The van will be here at 6. Be ready." He paused at the door. "This is business, Dad. Try to understand that. Business." Arthur's voice was hollow. "You're throwing your parents out on Christmas Eve for money, and you call it business." Marcus didn't answer. He just walked out, followed by his entourage. The Mercedes pulled away, leaving Arthur and Evelyn standing in their living room. The home they'd built a life in, the place where they'd raised their children, celebrated birthdays, anniversaries, survived hardships together. Evelyn sank into her chair, her whole body shaking violently now. "Arthur, what do we do?" Arthur looked around their home. At the photographs on the walls, Marcus as a baby, Marcus's first day of school, Marcus graduating high school. Every milestone captured and treasured. The timer in the kitchen was still beeping. The pies sat on the counter cooling. The turkey was ready. The good china was set. Everything was perfect for a Christmas that would never happen. "I don't know," Arthur whispered. "God help me, Ev, I don't know." At 5:45 p.m., they stood on their porch with 2 small suitcases. That's all they'd been able to pack in the time they had. Clothes, medications, a few photographs. Arthur had tried to take his toolbox, the one he'd owned for 50 years, but Marcus had come back with the attorney and said no. Property of the house, they claimed. Everything stayed. Evelyn clutched a single-framed photograph, their wedding picture. Marcus had tried to take that too, but she'd held on so tightly that her shaking hands had actually steadied. "The van isn't here," Evelyn said quietly. It was past 6 now. The sun was setting and the temperature was dropping fast. Arthur checked his watch. He said 6 o'clock. They waited. 6:15, 6:30. At 6:45, Marcus's Mercedes pulled back up. He got out alone this time. "Where's the van?" Arthur asked. There was a scheduling issue. Marcus wouldn't meet his eyes. "They'll be here in the morning to pick you up." "In the morning?" Evelyn's voice rose. "Marcus, where are we supposed to go tonight?" "I'm sure you can figure something out." Marcus pulled out a set of new keys. He'd already changed the locks. "I'll see you tomorrow." "Wait," Arthur stepped forward. "You can't just leave us out here. It's going to be below freezing tonight." "Dad, you're being dramatic. There's a bus stop down the road." "I'm sure someone will." "Someone will what, Marcus?" Arthur's voice shook with rage and disbelief. "We're 75 years old. Your mother can barely walk 100 feet without needing to rest." Marcus was already getting back in his car. "You should have thought about that before you got old Dad." The Mercedes drove away. Arthur and Evelyn stood there, 2 small suitcases at their feet, watching their son disappear into the twilight. "He's coming back," Evelyn whispered. "He has to come back. He's just trying to scare us, make us agree to the home. He'll come back." But Arthur looked at the house, their house, and saw all the lights were off now, saw the new lock gleaming on the door. "No, Ev," he said quietly. "He's not coming back." The bus stop was 500 feet down the road. It felt like 500 miles. Arthur carried both suitcases, his bad knee screaming with every step. Evelyn held onto his arm, her legs shaking from more than just the Parkinson's. The cold was already seeping through her thin coat. "Just a little further," Arthur kept saying. "Just a little further, sweetheart." The bus stop was nothing more than a rusted metal bench under a small shelter with half the roof missing. Snow had drifted into one corner, creating a small frozen hill. They sat down on the bench. The metal was so cold, it burned through their clothes. "When's the next bus?" Evelyn asked, her teeth already starting to chatter. Arthur looked at the faded schedule posted on the shelter's wall. He squinted, trying to make out the numbers in the dying light. "Last bus was at 5:30, he said quietly. "When's the next one?" "Morning, 6 a.m. Evelyn looked at him, understanding slowly dawning on her face. "We can't stay out here all night, Arthur. It's supposed to drop to 15 degrees. "I know." Arthur put his arm around her, trying to share what little warmth he had. "Maybe someone will drive by. Someone we know." But this was a rural road. Their nearest neighbor was a quarter-mile away, and the Johnsons had left for their daughter's house in Florida 2 days ago. Everyone who could leave for the holidays had already left. The sun set completely. The temperature dropped. Arthur took off his jacket, the thin windbreaker that was all he'd grabbed in the chaos, and draped it over Evelyn's shoulders. "Arthur, no. You'll freeze." "I'll be fine." But his voice was already shaking. "Just stay close to me." They huddled together on that frozen bench as the night grew darker and colder. Cars passed occasionally, people heading to warm homes, to Christmas Eve dinners with family who loved them. None of them stopped. Why would they? 2 old people at a bus stop wasn't an unusual sight. By 8 o'clock, Evelyn's shaking had gotten worse. "I can't stop," she said, her voice slurred. "Arthur, I can't control it anymore." He knew it wasn't just the Parkinson's now. It was hypothermia setting in. "Talk to me, Ev. Stay awake. Tell me about our first Christmas." "So cold," she whispered. "I know, baby. I know. But talk to me. Remember our first Christmas you burned the turkey." A small smile flickered on her blue lips. You said it was the best meal you'd ever had." "It was. Because you made it." Arthur rubbed her arms, her back, trying desperately to keep her circulation going. "Tell me more. What else do you remember?" "We were so poor." Evelyn's eyes were starting to close. "Couldn't afford presents. You made me a jewelry box out of scrap wood." "I still have it," Arthur said, his voice breaking. "It's in our house, in our bedroom." But it wasn't their house anymore. "I'm so tired, Arthur." No, stay with me." He patted her cheek gently. "Evelyn, look at me. Open your eyes." She did, but they were unfocused. Remember when Marcus was born, you were so scared. Terrified, Arthur admitted. Thought I'd drop him. You were so gentle. Evelyn's smile was distant, now lost in memory. Both our boys. You were always so gentle. Marcus. The name sent a spike of pain through Arthur's chest. His son had done this, had left them here to die, because that's what would happen if they stayed out here all night. They would die. We need to move, Arthur said. Ev, we need to walk. Keep our blood flowing. Can't, she whispered. Too tired. Yes, you can. He stood, every joint in his body protesting. He tried to pull her up, but she was dead weight. Evelyn, please, stand up. Just let me sleep, she murmured. Just for a minute. Arthur knew that sleep. That was the sleep you didn't wake up from. No. He shook her harder than he meant to. Evelyn Carter, you stay awake. You hear me. You stay awake. She opened her eyes, focused on him with effort. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. Just stay with me. He sat back down, pulled her against his chest, wrapped his arms around her. His own body was shaking violently now, his fingers numb his face, burning from the cold. This is how it ends, he thought. 75 years of life, 52 years of marriage, and it ends on a frozen bench because their own son values money more than their lives. I love you, he whispered into Evelyn's hair. I love you so much. Love you too. She breathed, her voice barely audible now. Another car passed, didn't slow down. The wind picked up, cutting through them like knives. Arthur closed his eyes and prayed. He wasn't a particularly religious man, but he prayed now. Prayed for help. Prayed for a miracle. Prayed that if they were going to die, they'd go together. He didn't let go of his wife, not when he couldn't feel his arms anymore, not when his own consciousness started to fade. He held on because that's what he'd promised 52 years ago, for better or worse, in sickness and health, until death do us part. The last thing he heard before the darkness took him was the distant rumble of engines. Lots of engines. Jax had been thinking about the old couple for 3 days. He'd made it home safely that night, the Harley running smooth thanks to Arthur's repair. But something had stuck with him. The way they'd helped without hesitation, the warmth in that small house, the kindness in their eyes. His grandmother would have liked them. Christmas Eve morning, he'd woken up with an idea. A crazy idea maybe, but one he couldn't shake. He'd called Big Mike first. Mike was the president of their charter, 55 years old, built like a tank with a gray beard down to his chest and a heart bigger than his massive frame. You want to do what? Mike had asked. I want to go back, take the club, do something nice for them. Kid, we don't even know these people. They helped me, Mike, when they didn't have to, when they had nothing. Jax's voice was firm. My Gram always said you pay back kindness with kindness. I want to do this. There was a long pause. Then Mike had laughed deep and booming. Your grandmother raised you right, kid. I'm in. Let's make it a good Christmas for them. Word spread through the club fast. By noon, the plan was set. 500 riders would make the trip. They'd bring food, gifts, supplies. They'd help fix up the old couple's house. Mike had noticed the roof looked like it needed work. They'd make it a Christmas Arthur and Evelyn would never forget. By 4 p.m. on Christmas Eve, the convoy was rolling. 500 Harleys, Triumphs, Indians, and custom bikes stretched for miles along the highway. The sound was thunderous, a wall of engines that made the ground shake. Jax led the way, the memory of that small wooden house fixed in his mind. It was full dark when they arrived at the rural road. Jax's heart was pounding with excitement. He couldn't wait to see their faces. But something was wrong. The house was completely dark. No lights in the windows, no smoke from the chimney. The convoy pulled up to the property, 500 bikes lining the road and filling the yard. Engines died, leaving an eerie silence. Jax walked to the front door, knocked. Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter, it's Jax, the guy whose bike you fixed. No answer. He knocked again, harder. Hello. The door opened, but it wasn't Arthur. A man in his 40s stood there, annoyed, holding a glass of expensive whiskey. What the hell do you want? Jax blinked. I'm looking for Arthur and Evelyn Carter, the couple who live here. They don't live here anymore. This is private property. Leave before I call the cops. Something cold settled in Jax's stomach. What do you mean they don't live here? This is their house. Was their house. It's mine now. And you're trespassing. Behind Jax, Big Mike stepped up. All 6'5", 300 pounds of him. Son, I suggest you tell us what happened to the Carters. Right now. The man Marcus stepped back, suddenly less confident-faced with 500 bikers. They moved. To a senior facility. It's none of your business." "A senior facility." Jax's voice rose. "They didn't say anything about moving?" "Well, plans change. Now get off my property before—" Jax's eyes fell on something lying in the snow near the porch. He walked over, bent down, and picked it up. Arthur's walking stick. The wooden cane with the carved handle that the old man had used to get around. Arthur had been using this when Jax first met him, had been leaning on it when they said goodbye. He wouldn't have left this, Jax said quietly. He needed this to walk. Big Mike's expression darkened. "Where are they? What did you do?" "I didn't do anything. They signed over the house. I moved them to a facility. It's all legal." "When?" Jax grabbed Marcus by the collar. "When did they leave?" "This afternoon. The van picked them up this afternoon." "What van? What facility?" I don't remember the name. You're lying." Jax pulled out his phone, turned on the flashlight, and shone it in Marcus's face. The man was sweating despite the cold. "Tell me the truth. Where are your parents?" "They're fine. They're probably at the facility by now." "Lisa," Big Mike shouted. A woman in her 30s broke from the crowd, walked up. She was wearing an angel's vest over her nursing scrubs. "Call every senior facility within 50 miles. Ask if they admitted Arthur and Evelyn Carter today." Lisa nodded, already dialing. "Check the house," Mike ordered. A dozen bikers moved past Marcus, who was too scared to protest now. "House is empty," someone called. "No one's here." "Their stuff is here, though." Another voice. "Clothes in the closets, food in the kitchen. Looks like they left in a hurry." Jax's grip on Marcus tightened. "Tell me exactly what happened. Every detail. Now." Marcus crumbled. The words came out in a rush, the forged papers, the sale, the promise of a van that never came, leaving them at the bus stop. "You left them where?" Jax's voice was deadly quiet. "The bus stop down the road. But that was hours ago. They probably got on a bus." "There are no evening buses on this route," Big Mike roared. "It's Christmas Eve." The realization hit Jax like a freight train. "How many hours ago?" "I don't know, maybe 6. Jax didn't wait to hear more. He ran for his bike, screaming orders. "Spread out. Check every bus stop, every shelter within 5 miles. Move." 500 engines roared to life. They split into groups, racing down different roads, headlights cutting through the darkness. Jax took the main road, his heart hammering. 6 hours in this cold. 6 hours at their age. Please, he thought. Please let them be okay. His headlights swept over the bus stop. At first, he thought it was empty. Then he saw them. 2 figures huddled on the bench, so still they could have been statues. Snow had started to gather on them. "Here!" Jax screamed into his radio. "I've found them." He was off his bike before it fully stopped running to the bench. "Mr. Carter, Mrs. Carter." Arthur's eyes were closed. His skin was gray, his lips blue. His arms were wrapped around Evelyn, who looked even worse, her whole body rigid, her breathing so shallow Jax couldn't see her chest moving. "No, no, no, no." Jax touched Arthur's face, ice cold. "Stay with me. Please stay with me." Arthur's eyes fluttered open, unfocused. "Jax." The word was barely a whisper. "Yeah, it's me. I'm here. We're going to help you." More bikes arrived, circling the bus stop with their headlights creating a ring of light. Big Mike jumped off his Harley, shrugging out of his heavy leather jacket. "Lisa, get over here." Lisa ran up with a medical bag. "Hypothermia, both of them. We need to warm them up slowly." "Use our jackets," someone shouted. Within seconds, a dozen leather jackets were piled on top of Evelyn. Big Mike wrapped his around Arthur, who was still trying to protect his wife, even as he was barely conscious. "Get the heated blankets from the support truck," Mike ordered. "I've got hand warmers." A biker ran up with chemical heat packs, cracking them and tucking them under the coats. "Evelyn," Arthur mumbled, trying to reach for his wife, even though they were right next to each other. "Is she—" "She's okay." Jax lied because he didn't know if it was true, but he needed Arthur to stay calm. "She's going to be okay. So are you." Lisa checked Evelyn's pulse, her face grave. "Pulse is weak but steady. She's in worse shape. The Parkinson's probably made her more vulnerable." She looked at Jax. "We need to get them to a hospital. Now." "Snake," Mike bellowed. "Get the truck up here." A modified pickup truck with a heated camper shell pulled up. The inside had been rigged with blankets and a portable heater. "Carefully," Lisa directed as they lifted Evelyn. "Don't move her too fast." Arthur tried to stand to follow his wife, but his legs gave out. Jax caught him. "I've got you, sir. I've got you." They loaded both of them into the truck bed, the heater already running, piling more blankets around them. "St. Mary's Hospital," Lisa told the driver. "Run every red light." As the truck pulled away, escorted by a dozen bikes with lights and sirens, Jack stood in the snow staring at the empty bus stop. They'd almost died here. Would have died here if he'd been even an hour later. Big Mike put a hand on his shoulder. "They're alive, kid. That's what matters." Jax turned to look back at the house down the road, the house where Marcus was probably still cowering inside. "Mike," Jax said quietly, "I need you to do something for me." "Name it. Keep me from going back to that house right now." Mike understood. "Yeah, I think we all need that." But his eyes, like Jax's, were fixed on that distant house, and the rage there was cold and controlled and absolutely terrifying. St. Mary's Hospital emergency room had never seen anything like it. 500 bikers descended on the parking lot, a sea of leather and chrome under the fluorescent lights. They couldn't all fit inside, so most waited outside, engines idling, keeping watch. Jax paced in the waiting room, unable to sit still. Big Mike sat nearby, his massive frame somehow making the plastic chair look like a child's toy. "They've been in there for 2 hours, Jax muttered. "Why hasn't anyone told us anything?" "Because the doctors are working," Lisa said calmly. She'd stayed while the others waited outside. "Hypothermia takes time to treat. They have to warm them up gradually, or it can cause more damage." "But they'll be okay, right?" Jax looked at her desperately. "They'll be okay." Lisa's expression was guarded. "I don't know, Jax. They were out there for a long time. At their age with Mrs. Carter's Parkinson's." She didn't finish. She didn't have to. Jax sank into a chair, his head in his hands. 3 days ago, these people had saved him, had shown him kindness when they didn't have to, and now they were fighting for their lives because their own son had thrown them away like garbage. "It's my fault," he said quietly. "If I'd come back earlier, if I'd checked on them—" "Stop!" Big Mike's voice was firm. "This isn't on you. This is on that piece of work who calls himself their son. I should have known something was wrong. The house was dark." "Jax." Mike grabbed his shoulder, forcing him to look up. "You saved them. You found them in time. That's what matters." The emergency room doors swung open. A doctor in scrubs approached, looking exhausted. "Family of Arthur and Evelyn Carter." Jax stood. "We're all they've got." The doctor looked at the waiting room full of bikers and didn't even blink. "They're stable. We've got them warmed up, started IV fluids. Mr. Carter is doing better. His vitals are strong. Mrs. Carter is more critical. The combination of hypothermia and her Parkinson's put a lot of stress on her system. But they'll live." Jax's voice cracked on the words. "We believe so, yes, but they'll need to stay for observation. At least 48 hours. Relief flooded through Jax so suddenly his knees almost gave out. "Can we see them?" "2 visitors at a time, and keep it brief, they need rest." Jax and Big Mike followed the doctor down the hallway. The room was small with 2 beds. Arthur was in the first awake, but groggy, an oxygen tube in his nose and IVs in both arms. Evelyn was in the second bed, still unconscious, her breathing supported by a machine. Arthur's eyes focused on Jax. You came back." "Yeah." Jax pulled a chair close to the bed. "I came back." How did you find us?" "I brought some friends. We were coming to surprise you for Christmas." Jax's throat was tight. "Found your son instead." Arthur's eyes closed, pain washing over his face. "Marcus. He told us what he did." Big Mike stepped forward. "What he did to you and your wife." "He's my son," Arthur whispered. "I don't understand. How could he—" "Some people value money more than family," Mike said gently. "It's not a reflection on you. You're a good man, Arthur Carter. I can see that." Arthur looked at these 2 strangers, these intimidating men with their leather vests and tattoos who'd saved his life. "Who are you people?" "We're Jax's family," Mike said simply. "And anyone who helps one of ours is family to us, too." "I just fixed his bike," Arthur said, confused. "It was nothing." "It was everything." Jax interrupted. "You helped me when you didn't have to. You and Mrs. Carter showed me kindness I hadn't seen in a long time. My grandmother would have said that's the kind of debt you always repay." Arthur's eyes drifted to his wife's bed. "Is she going to be okay?" "The doctors think so," Jax said. "She's strong. She held on out there for hours. She's a fighter." 52 years, Arthur said softly. "We've been married 52 years. Can't lose her now." "You won't," Mike promised. "We're going to make sure of it." A nurse poked her head in. "I'm sorry, but you need to let him rest." Jax stood, but Arthur grabbed his hand with surprising strength. "My house," Arthur said. "Marcus took our house. Where are we supposed to go when they release us?" Jax and Mike exchanged a look. "Don't worry about that," Mike said. "We're taking care of it." "But, Mr. Carter," Jack said firmly, "you took care of me when I needed it. Now it's our turn. Trust us." Arthur searched their faces, then nodded slowly. "Thank you. Thank you both." Outside in the parking lot, the club had gathered. Word had spread the old couple was going to make it, but the celebration was muted because everyone knew what came next. Big Mike stood in front of the assembled riders, his voice carrying in the cold night air. "Brothers and sisters," he said, "we've got a situation. 2 good people almost died tonight because of greed and cruelty. Their own son sold their home out from under them and left them to freeze." Angry murmurs rippled through the crowd. Now we could let the law handle it. Let lawyers and courts sort it out. Could take months, maybe years. Mike's smile was sharp. Or we could handle it our way, the right way. "What are you thinking, Prez?" someone called out. "I'm thinking those old folks deserve their home back. I'm thinking their son needs to understand there are consequences for what he did. And I'm thinking we're the ones to deliver that message." Cheers erupted. "So, here's the plan," Mike continued. "We're going to pay Marcus Carter a visit. We're going to explain very clearly how things are going to go from here on out. And we're going to make sure Arthur and Evelyn never have to worry about being hurt again." "Legal?" someone asked. "Completely legal." Lisa spoke up. She'd been on her phone. "I've been talking to a lawyer friend. The transfer of ownership was obtained under false pretenses. That's fraud. The Carters have grounds to contest it. With the right attorney, they can get their house back." "And I know just the attorney," a voice called out. A biker in his 60s stepped forward. "I'm retired now, but I still have my law license. I'll represent them pro bono." "Perfect," Mike grinned. "So here's what we do. We go to that house. We have our lawyer friend here serve Marcus with papers contesting the sale. We make it very clear that he's got 2 choices: sign the house back over voluntarily, or we drag this through court and make his life hell for the next year." "He'll fight it," Jack said. "Maybe, but I'm betting when he sees 500 of us on his doorstep, he'll see reason." Mike's eyes were hard, and if he doesn't, well, we can be very persuasive. "What about the new buyers?" someone asked. "Sale hasn't closed yet," the lawyer said. "If we act fast, we can stop it." "Then let's act fast." Mike mounted his bike. "Jax, you stay here with the Carters. Rest of you follow me." "No." Jax shook his head. "I'm coming. I need to see this." Mike studied him for a moment, then nodded. "All right, but you keep your cool. We do this smart, not violent. Understood?" "Understood." 499 engines roared to life. The sound reached Marcus before the lights did. He was in the living room of his newly acquired property, celebrating with the real estate broker and his attorney. Champagne, expensive cheese plans for the massive profit he'd make on the flip. Then the rumble started, distant at first, then growing louder and louder. "What is that?" Janet Moss asked, setting down her glass. Marcus went to the window, and his blood ran cold. The driveway, the road, the entire property as far as he could see covered in motorcycles. Headlights pointed at the house like spotlights, and they were still coming, an endless stream of bikes filling every available space. "Oh my God," he whispered. The lawyer Richard joined him at the window. Are those bikers?" "Call the police," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "Call them now." Richard pulled out his phone just as every single motorcycle cut their engines simultaneously. The silence was somehow more terrifying than the noise had been. Then the headlights all turned on at once. High beams pointed directly at the house, flooding the interior with blinding white light. The front door handle rattled. Marcus had locked it, changed the locks that very afternoon. But the door opened anyway. Big Mike had simply twisted the handle until the cheap new lock broke. 6 men walked in. They filled the living room, massive in their leather vests, their presence overwhelming. Marcus backed up against the wall. "This is private property. I'll have you arrested." "For what?" Big Mike's voice was calm, almost pleasant. "We knocked. Door open. Maybe you should invest in better locks. Get out, all of you. We'll leave when we're done talking." Mike gestured to the lawyer biker who pulled out a folder of papers. "First, let me introduce you to Harold Brennan. Used to be one of the best real estate attorneys in the state before he retired. He's representing your parents now." "My parents have no grounds." "Fraud," Harold said mildly. "You obtained transfer of ownership under false pretenses. That's fraud, Mr. Carter, and it's illegal." "I did no such thing." "You told your father the papers were for health insurance. We have witnesses. The mailman who delivered the package remembers you specifically telling him to tell Mr. Carter, it was urgent insurance documents. That's documented fraud. Marcus's face paled. You can't prove. We can. Harold smiled. And we will. In court. A very public court case where everyone will know you tricked your elderly disabled parents out of their home and left them to die in a snowstorm. I didn't. They were supposed to go to a facility. What facility? Jax stepped forward. Give me the name. Marcus's mouth opened and closed. I can't remember. You can't remember because there never was one, Jax said, his voice dangerously quiet. You lied. You left them at a bus stop on Christmas Eve in a blizzard. That's attempted murder, another biker added helpfully. Or at minimum criminal neglect of vulnerable adults. That's 5 to 10 years depending on the judge. Marcus's attorney Richard cleared his throat nervously. Marcus, perhaps we should consider— Shut up, Richard, Marcus snapped. Then to the bikers, you can't intimidate me. I'll fight this. I'll win. The papers are legal, my attorney verified. Your attorney verified papers obtained through fraud, Harold interrupted, which makes him complicit. He could lose his license. Richard went white. Here's what's going to happen. Big Mike said, his voice still calm, but carrying absolute authority. You're going to sign papers transferring this house back to Arthur and Evelyn Carter. Tonight. Right now. And if I refuse, then we file criminal charges tomorrow morning. Fraud, elder abuse, attempted manslaughter. We tie you up in court for years. And trust me, son, we've got deep pockets and a lot of time. We'll make this the most expensive decision you ever made. Plus, Jax added, every day we'll be outside whatever office you work at. Every client meeting, every business lunch, we'll be there. Legal public protest. 500 of us holding signs explaining what you did to your parents. Wonder how that'll affect your business. Marcus looked around wildly. The bikers filled the room, immovable as mountains. Outside, hundreds more waited. This is extortion. No, Harold said. This is justice. You can accept it now, voluntarily, or we can drag you through hell to get it. Your choice. Janet Moss, the real estate broker, stood up shakily. Marcus, I want no part of this. If these allegations are true, I'm withdrawing from the sale. I won't be party to fraud. Janet, I'm sorry, but my reputation is worth more than this commission. She grabbed her briefcase and headed for the door. The bikers parted to let her through. Richard was edging toward the door too. Marcus, I have to advise you to comply. If even half of what they're saying is true— You coward, Marcus shouted. I'm a realist. Sign the papers. Richard practically ran for the exit. Now it was just Marcus alone facing an army. Big Mike pulled out a document, the transfer papers Harold had prepared. Sign here, and here, and here. And if I don't, Mike leaned in close, then I go to the hospital and explain to Arthur and Evelyn Carter that their son chose money over them, that he'd rather destroy them than do the right thing. I'll watch it break their hearts all over again, and then I'll spend every resource I have making sure you pay for it. He straightened up. But here's the thing, Marcus. We're not like you. We're giving you a choice. Sign and you walk away. You lose the house, but you're free. Or don't sign and we bury you in legal fees and public shame until you've got nothing left. That's not a choice. It's more than you gave your parents. The words hit like a slap. Marcus looked at the papers at the pen Mike was holding out. His hands shook as he took it. I'll challenge this, he said, but his voice was defeated. I'll say you forced me. Sign it in front of a notary then, Harold suggested. Lisa came in, pulling a notary stamp from her bag. I'm certified. I'll witness. Marcus stared at the papers, at his signature line, at the end of his windfall profit. My father should have left me more, he muttered bitterly. Worked his whole life and had nothing to show for it. You deserved parents who loved you, Jax interrupted, who sacrificed for you, who would have done anything for you, and you threw it away for money you didn't earn. Marcus signed. Each signature was angry, the pen nearly tearing the paper. When it was done, Harold took the papers, checked them over, then nodded to Lisa, who added her notary seal. Done, Harold said. As of this moment, the house belongs to Arthur and Evelyn Carter again. Now get out, Big Mike said quietly. This is my house. No, it's their house. You're trespassing now. You've got 5 minutes to take whatever you came with and leave. Anything you added, the new locks, whatever stays, it's theirs. Marcus stood there shaking with rage and humiliation. I said get out, Mike repeated. Marcus grabbed his coat and his briefcase. At the door, he turned back. You think you've won? They're old. They're sick. They'll be dead in a few years anyway. And then what? This house will rot because they can't take care of it. They won't have to, Jax said, because they've got us now. Marcus's laugh was bitter. You'll stick around for what, a week, a month? Then you'll forget about them, move on to your next project. You're not their family. You're strangers. Family isn't blood, Big Mike said. Family is who shows up. And we're showing up. Marcus walked out into the sea of motorcycles. 500 engines started up as he passed a deafening wall of sound that followed him all the way to his Mercedes. He drove away, and the headlights followed him until he was gone from sight. Then, and only then, did the bikes fall silent. Big Mike turned to look at the house, warm lights now on in every window, the Christmas tree visible through the front window. "All right," he said, "let's make this place perfect for when they come home." The transformation took 6 hours. By midnight, the small wooden house glowed like something out of a fairy tale. Fresh firewood stacked on the porch, the roof patched where it had been leaking, new locks installed, real ones this time solid and secure, the windows cleaned until they sparkled. Inside was even better. The Christmas tree, the small tabletop one Arthur and Evelyn had put up, had been replaced with a 7-foot beauty that nearly touched the ceiling. Lights, ornaments, tinsel, presents beneath it wrapped in bright paper, food in the kitchen, turkey, ham, pies, casseroles, enough to feed an army. Or at least 2 elderly people for a month. "We might have overdone it," Lisa said, looking at the stuffed refrigerator. "No such thing," Big Mike replied. He was hanging a wreath on the front door. "When they get home, they're going to know they're cared for." Jack stood in the living room holding a frame he'd found in a box in the closet, the family photo Marcus had thrown away. He set it back on the mantel, right in the center where it belonged. "They get discharged tomorrow afternoon," Lisa said, checking her phone. "Doctors say they're doing well. Mrs. Carter is awake and asking for her husband." "They'll want to see each other," Jack said. "Already arranged. They're being moved to a shared room." Outside, most of the club had dispersed, heading to hotels or campgrounds to rest, but about 50 remained determined to keep watch through the night. "Prez," one of them called. "Someone's coming." Everyone tensed, but it wasn't Marcus returning. It was neighbors, the Johnsons back from Florida. The Mendez family from down the road, old Mrs. Patterson from 2 houses over. "We heard what happened," Mrs. Patterson said, carrying a covered dish. "Heard it from my granddaughter. She works at the hospital. Is it true about Marcus?" Big Mike nodded. "I'm afraid so." Mrs. Patterson's face hardened. "That boy. I never liked him. Always thought he was too good for this neighborhood." She thrust the dish at Jax. "This is for Arthur and Evelyn. Lasagna. Tell them we're thinking of them." More neighbors came, more food, more expressions of support and outrage at what Marcus had done. "We should have checked on them," Mr. Johnson said, guilt heavy in his voice. "We've been neighbors for 40 years. We should have—" "You're here now," Mike said gently. "That's what matters." The neighbors stayed helping with the final touches. Mrs. Patterson cleaned the bathroom until it shone. Mr. Johnson fixed a loose board on the porch. Mrs. Mendez organized the kitchen. By dawn, the house was perfect. "They're going to cry when they see this," Jack said. "Good tears," Lisa said. "The best kind." Arthur woke up in the hospital, feeling better than he had in days. The oxygen tube was gone. The IVs were out. And best of all, Evelyn was in the bed next to his, awake and smiling at him. "Hi, sweetheart," she said, her voice weak but steady. "Hi yourself." Arthur reached across the gap between beds and took her hand. "How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." She squeezed his fingers. "But alive, thanks to those bikers." "I don't understand it," Arthur admitted. "Why would they do all this for us?" "Because we helped one of their own," a voice said from the doorway. Jack stood there holding 2 cups of coffee. "And because you're good people, the world needs more of those." "Jax," Arthur's smile was genuine. "I was hoping you'd come by." "Couldn't stay away." Jax handed them the coffee decaf doctor approved. "I've got some news." "Good news." "We could use some," Evelyn said. "Your house. It's yours again, legally. Marcus signed it back over last night." The coffee cups nearly fell. "What?" Arthur breathed. "The club's lawyer found that Marcus committed fraud. We gave him a choice, sign it back voluntarily or face criminal charges and a civil suit. He signed." Evelyn burst into tears, happy ones this time. "Our house, our home." "Your home," Jax confirmed. "And we've done some work on it, some improvements. Hope that's okay." "Work?" Arthur looked confused. "You'll see when you get there, which should be this afternoon if the doctors clear you." The ride home was surreal. An ambulance drove them doctor's orders they still needed to take it easy. But the ambulance was escorted by 100 motorcycles, a parade through the rural roads. When they turned onto their street, Arthur gasped. The house was outlined in Christmas lights. The porch was decorated with wreaths and garland. Smoke curled from the chimney. And in the yard, 200 bikers stood in formation, creating a human corridor from the road to the front door. "What on earth?" Evelyn whispered. The ambulance stopped. The doors opened. Big Mike himself was there to help Arthur out, Jax to help Evelyn. "Welcome home," Mike said simply. They walked between the rows of bikers, each one nodding respectfully as they passed. Some of the women were crying. Some of the men, too. The front door opened. Warm air rushed out, carrying the smell of cinnamon and pine and home. Arthur stepped inside and stopped dead. The Christmas tree, the decorations, the presents, the food, everything perfect, everything beautiful. He couldn't find words. Evelyn moved to the mantel, saw their family photo back in its place of honor. Her hands shook as she touched the frame. "How?" Arthur turned to the bikers crowding into the room. "How did you do all this?" "We had help," Lisa said. "Your neighbors pitched in too." As if on cue, Mrs. Patterson appeared from the kitchen. "Arthur, Evelyn." "Oh, thank God you're all right." More neighbors filed in, hugging them, crying with them, celebrating their return. Jax watched from the doorway, a lump in his throat. This was what family was supposed to look like. This was what his grandmother had always taught him. Community kindness, people taking care of people. The party lasted hours. Food was served, stories were shared. Arthur sat in his favorite chair, which someone had repaired and reupholstered, and Evelyn sat on the arm of it, his arm around her waist. They looked at their home, filled with love and laughter and people who cared. "I can't believe this is real," Evelyn said softly. "Believe it," Arthur replied, squeezing her tight. "Believe it, Ev. We're home." As the sun set, most of the neighbors left, promising to check in regularly. The bikers began to disperse too, heading out in small groups. But Big Mike and Jax remained. "There's one more thing," Mike said. He pulled out 2 leather vests custom-made with the club's colors and logo. On the back, embroidered in beautiful script, "Arthur Carter, honorary member," and "Evelyn Carter, honorary member." "We'd be honored if you'd accept these," Mike said. "Your family now. Official." Arthur took the vest with shaking hands. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll wear it," Jax said. "Say you'll let us be there for you the way you were there for me." "And say you'll call if you ever need anything," Mike added. "Day or night, any one of us will be here." Evelyn put on her vest. It was warm, well-made, a shield against the cold. Arthur put his on too. On the front, over the heart, was a patch, protected by Hell's Angels. "No one will ever hurt you again," Mike promised. "Not while we're around." Arthur looked at these men, strangers a week ago, brothers now. "I don't know how to thank you." "You already did," Jax said. "3 days ago, in a blizzard, you showed me kindness. You saved my life in your own way. We're just returning the favor." 1 week later, New Year's Eve, Arthur and Evelyn sat on their porch, bundled in blankets, watching the sun set over the snow-covered fields. The temperature was dropping, but they weren't afraid of the cold anymore. They'd gained weight, all that food the club kept bringing. Evelyn's tremors had lessened with the new medication Lisa had helped them get. Arthur's knee felt better after seeing the physical therapist Mike had connected them with. But more than physical healing, they'd found something else. Peace, safety, family. The sound of engines made them look up. Down the road, headlights appeared. Not 500 this time, just 20 or so. Jax led the convoy, pulling up on his Harley. Behind him came Big Mike, Lisa, Harold, Snake, and about 15 others. "Evening, folks," Jax called out, killing the engine. "Hope you don't mind the invasion." "Mind." Evelyn's face lit up. "We've been waiting for you." The bikers dismounted, each carrying something. Food, drinks, decorations. Mike had a massive boombox tucked under one arm. "New Year's Eve party," Mike announced. "Can't let you two ring in the new year alone." "You didn't have to do this," Arthur said, but he was grinning. "Actually, we did." Jax climbed the porch steps. "It's tradition. Angels take care of their own on important nights." The next hour was controlled chaos in the best way. Food spread across every surface in the kitchen, music playing classic rock, an old country that Arthur loved, laughter filling every room. Arthur stood in his kitchen watching these people make themselves at home. Snake was teaching Evelyn a card trick. Harold was examining the bookshelf. Lisa was organizing food with two other women. Big Mike appeared at Arthur's elbow holding 2 bottles of beer. "You look happy," Mike observed. "I am." Arthur accepted the beer. "Happier than I've been in years." "Good, that's how it should be." Mike pulled out a small wooden box from his vest pocket. "This is for you and Evelyn, a New Year's gift." Arthur opened it. Inside were 2 medallions on chains beautifully crafted with the Hell's Angels logo on one side and engraved words on the other: protected, honored, family. "Mike, these are beautiful, but there's more." Mike's expression grew serious. "Arthur, what Marcus did to you, it shook all of us. Made us think about how many other elderly folks might be in the same situation, alone, vulnerable." Arthur nodded slowly. "So, we're starting a program, Guardian Angels. Club members who volunteer to check in on elderly people in the community, help with repairs, yard work, rides to appointments, whatever's needed." "Mike, that's incredible. You and Evelyn are the first. The reason we started this." Mike gestured to the medallions. "These are a promise. You wear these, everyone knows you're protected, not just by the club, but by every single member personally." Arthur's eyes misted over. "I don't know what to say." "Say you'll accept them." "Yes." Arthur's voice cracked. "Yes to all of it." They walked into the living room where Evelyn was still learning card tricks. "Ev," Arthur called softly, "come here a minute." She looked up and stood carefully. Snake helped her walk over. Arthur showed her the second medallion. "The club wants to make it official. We're family now." Evelyn's hands shook as she took it. "It's beautiful." Mike carefully placed the chain around her neck. The medallion settled against her heart. Jax stepped forward, holding 2 leather vests, even more beautiful than before. Custom made, perfectly fitted with intricate embroidery. "Arthur and Evelyn Carter," Jax said formally, and the room quieted. "You showed me kindness when I was a stranger. You helped me without expecting anything in return." He held out the vests. "These mean you're under our protection now and forever. They mean your family." Arthur took his vest with trembling hands. On the back, "Arthur Carter, forever protected." Below it, the club's logo with angel wings surrounding it. Evelyn's was identical with her name instead. "There's more," Big Mike said, pulling out official-looking papers. "We've set up a trust fund. It covers your property taxes, utilities, medical expenses, and a monthly stipend for groceries." "What? That's too much." "You can and you will," Lisa interrupted gently. "Arthur, you spent 50 years fixing cars for people who couldn't afford much. You charged fair prices. You kept half this county running. And Evelyn cleaned houses for 40 years, helped raise other people's children, brought soup to sick neighbors." One of the women added. "You gave your whole lives to helping others," Harold said. "Let us give back." Evelyn was crying now. Arthur put his arm around her. "We were just doing what neighbors should do," Arthur whispered. "Exactly," Jax said, "and now we're being the neighbors you deserve." Snake stepped forward. "My grandfather died alone because his kids abandoned him. When I heard what happened to you two, I swore I'd never let that happen to anyone again." Others spoke up, sharing similar stories. Parents abandoned, grandparents taken advantage of. "You two are treasures," Big Mike said firmly, "and we protect our treasures." Arthur put on his vest. It fit perfectly warm and solid. Evelyn put on hers, running her fingers over her embroidered name. "Thank you," Arthur said, his voice carrying through the room. "You've given us more than our home back. You've given us hope." "You've given us the same thing," Jax replied. "You reminded us why we call ourselves a brotherhood. It's about taking care of each other." Mike raised his beer. "To Arthur and Evelyn Carter, our family, our proof that goodness still exists." "To Arthur and Evelyn," everyone chorused. At 11:30, they went outside. Someone had set up a fire pit in the front yard with chairs arranged in a circle. Stories were shared around the fire. Harold talked about his late wife, Lisa about becoming a nurse. Snake shared memories of his grandfather. As midnight approached, Mike stood. "I want to make this official. Arthur, Evelyn, please stand." Mike pulled out a laminated card. "By the power vested in me as president, I declare Arthur and Evelyn Carter to be lifetime honorary members of the Hells Angels Motorcycle Club. You are family now and forever." He shook Arthur's hand, then hugged Evelyn. "And one more thing." Mike gestured to the house. Arthur turned. Someone had mounted a plaque next to the front door. "Carter House, protected property of the Hells Angels MC. This family is under permanent protection." "That's not a threat," Mike said. "That's a promise. You're safe. Forever." The countdown started. 60 seconds to midnight. They gathered in a circle around the fire. 10, 9, 8. Arthur held Evelyn close, both wearing their vests and medallions. 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Fireworks exploded in the distance. Arthur kissed Evelyn like he had every New Year for 52 years. But this year was different. This year, they had a future that felt bright. As the celebration continued, Arthur sat by the fire next to Jax. "Can I tell you something?" Arthur said. "Anything. I spent the last few years scared of getting older, of being forgotten, scared that when I died, I wouldn't matter. And now," Arthur looked around at the people laughing at his wife, smiling at their home. "Now, I'm not scared anymore, because I know I matter. We're part of something bigger than ourselves." Jax nodded. "You changed my life, Arthur, and through you, you've changed all of us. That's a legacy." The snow started falling again, gentle and peaceful. When Arthur and Evelyn finally went to bed at 2 in the morning, when the last bikers had left with promises to return soon, they wore their medallions and slept the sleep of people who know they're truly loved. The nightmares of that frozen bus stop were gone. In their place was the rumble of motorcycle engines, the sound of family coming home. Always.
Join us to share meaningful stories by hitting the like and subscribe buttons. Don't forget to turn on the notification bell to start your day with profound lessons and heartfelt empathy.